Let me write you a picture. Star Wars, Revenge of the Sith. In this version of the story, Anakin draws the line at the issuing of Order 66 and breaks his very temporary apprenticeship with Palpatine. The next few hours of cinema are dedicated to Anakin protecting the remnants of the Jedi and Coruscant from annihilation. The man destined for greatness who started with nothing, pit against the most evil entity in the universe who has all the power in that universe in the palm of his hand. Now imagine stuff happens between now and the final showdown. Like it does. And when the gloves come off and get tossed, it's everyone's favorite aura farmer, Boba Fett, torn apart and turned to the Republic after reconciling the things that actually led to Jango's death, and vengeful over the idea of his father's offspring, the clones, his siblings, being used as a tool to bring the free world to an end, who fights and defeats Palpatine. I'm not saying that doesn't have potential to be awesome in a vacuum, but it would definitely leave a bad taste in the mouths of literally everyone who had been watching the prequels, and especially the people who have really been paying attention to Episode 3. I want to talk about star-crossed lovers. A character pair who, through thick and thin, against all odds, and in the face of any kind of adversity thrown their way, persists, perseveres, and pushes with the end of being together at their back. The existence of star-crossed lovers also suggests the existence of star-crossed haters. Jetstream Sam, Dio Brando, the Shredder. The point is that opposites attract in more than just a romantic way. Themes are ultimately questions a writer poses and needs to answer, and one of the best ways to answer them is to take one character who champions one side of that theme, and another who champions the opposite, and you make them slug it out. That's resolution. It resolves a theme, resolves a character arc, and probably resolves a plot thread too. Or it expands on those things when the resolution is supposed to come later. Character A says it's the people we meet throughout our lives and which fate brings us together with who shape us into the person we are and make us more complete. Character B says the only person who can shape you is yourself, and any time spent coveting or clinging to things beyond yourself is pointless. Building connections isn't the point of life, pursuing the ultimate self is. This is the sort of story-long grandstanding conflict that ties the whole narrative together. And with the assumption that the narrative builds these two as the ideological opponents the themes say they are, comes knowledge that one way or another these two complete each other. They complete the story, and have to come together in the end to give the big looming question an answer. They are star-crossed enemies. Not to be confused with the concept of nemesis. And taking away a ladder's stills has consequences. This is Officer Zhu Yuan. For all intents and purposes, she should be the main character of Zenless Zone Zero's first season. But by nature of this being the story of a gacha game, we have to observe and evaluate it with two crucial truths in mind. 1. The audience surrogate will always be the main character. In a case where one exists, they are the lens through which we are to absorb and interpret the game's story. We're lucky if they have a personality at all. And we're extremely lucky to have Bell and Wise. But that's a video for some other time. And 2. The story will always be about the new characters, because at the end of the day, games like this can't exist without its audience pouring pocket change into it. Or loans. The new always holds priority over the good. Despite this being the climactic final chapter of the first season's story, this is a story reserved for Section 6, and we should expect any culmination from other characters to be cameos. But I had fucking faith, man! Stop speaking for him. Fine. We're bent because the final boss is the antagonist. Because Officer Bringer didn't get to be an antagonist to Zhu Yuan, only a negative example of who Zhu Yuan could become if she didn't complete her character arc in her dedicated chapter. And now in the 12th hour, he finally comes to the forefront as a proper antagonistic force, and Zhu Yuan doesn't even interact with him. Zenless Zone Zero is a story about hope, community, and the perseverance of a people in the face of overwhelming adversity. And the full counter to that is on a far bigger scale than Bringer can provide. It's probably going to be the creator, this godlike, ethereal presence everyone on the side of the villain seems to worship or draw on, its true form, or something pulling its strings behind the scenes. The ultimate force of despair, a lone monolith of control, the overwhelming adversity set on wiping humanity out once and for all. Also a video for another time, right? Inspector Bringer is the actual antagonist, and continues to be a negative foil to Zhu Yuan 2.0 despite the story insisting he's Miyabi's villain. And I'll give credit where it's due. When it's force on force, they're a good match. Both are products of their own kind of sacrifice. Bringer sacrifices himself to achieve a more powerful form in the shape of the creator, and Miyabi breaks free of the cycle of sacrifice her sword imposed on her family and reaches a new height of power that way. Their clash is blind faith versus discipline, and it works. But it only works after here. From this moment on, I only have a single note, and that's something for this video, but not right now. Right now, let's talk about the evolution of Bringer's character. As of the start of Chapter 5, he is the closest to a position of power as he could be without sitting in it, and he stopped putting up a front. Our reintroduction to him is a preparatory speech, going over important notes of the significance of New Eridu, how it stands as a beacon of hope in a world plagued by ether, how he's running to oppose groups who are so willing and ready to trample on human lives, and reflecting on the thought of being a hero of the people, but forgetting what comes after that. And bro is mocking all of it. He's reading from a script, one that annoys him to even read, but we do get a thesis for his motivation. Hallelujah. That leader of yours, the hero who led you to New Eridu when you were a kid, what happened to him? The night before we reached the city, he became corrupted, and was abandoned by the very survivors he'd been protecting. This is the sort of stuff that gives me faith in Hoyoverse's writing. The connection between Zhu Yuan and Bringer is rekindled and burning nice and bright. Zhu Yuan was inspired to become a public security officer after Bringer saved her, and Bringer was likely inspired the very same way by his hero. They both take ideas away from their mentor after being saved, and break away from that mentor in their own ways. Zhu Yuan clings to an image she has of Bringer as an ideal champion of the law and hero of the people, despite him being a POS, and sternly resolves to be better than him and chase the ideals she treasures instead of the false idols she thought embodied them. Bringer, on the other hand, keeps chasing fame, status, a position above the rest of the city he serves, and he does it with the tailwind of assuming that the city is going to stab him in the back the moment he shows any weakness. They're good foils. They're even better foils now. Bringer says you can't have faith in people because as soon as there's any friction, they'll abandon you. Zhu Yuan has so much faith in the good nature of the people she protects that she's willing to confidently bet money on it. It's a little gesture, and it's mostly to endear us to her and twist the knife when she learns that we've been lying to her about being upstanding citizens all this time. And it's not one we need because these two are already fated to fight. Bringer is Zhu Yuan's antagonist, and their conflict is unresolved. The game plays its cards in a slightly different way, as we mentioned, with Zhu Yuan's conflict stemming from Officer Bringer but never being with him. Her character arc revolves around detaching herself from Bringer and becoming the thing he could never be. But they never come to blows or barbs, and Bringer is never defeated by her. It stinks of setup. We get lots of stints of conversation between Zhu and Miyabi peppered throughout the chapters, and with Sarah skulking around and her involvement in Chapter 5, it sets a really solid stage for the chapter protagonist and the season protagonist to each have a baddie to beat. A Storm of Falling Stars is about power. The election's coming to a close, a new commissioner is about to be elected, Miyabi's mystical family heirloom is the center of attention, and the final showdown concludes with a clash between two people wielding that massive power in different ways for different purposes, and with different relationships with that power. Notes check out. And you get a bit of humanity versus overwhelming adversity in there too, since we spend a good portion of time with Miyabi near the chapter's end humanizing her and dehumanizing Bringer. And it's here that I want to draw a line. This Bringer and this Bringer are different characters. Huh? Drawing a line between Bringer as an individual and Bringer as a force of nature. That's what they were going for. It's why they hold off on Miyabi showing up until after the situation gets completely out of hand. Miyabi and Caesar. We'll talk about Caesar in a moment. Before they show up, it's the Climactic Section 6 show. And none of Harumasa, Sokaku, or Yanagi have any connection to Bringer beyond needing to bring him down, thematic or otherwise. They should have been the ones who took Miyabi to the medical center, leaving Zhu Yuan to chase after and confront Bringer head on. There's a lot of significance to Bringer drawing on the power of ether corruption just to be brought down by his own anti-corruption equipment which he gave to Zhu Yuan. But that's just the icing. Seth can't be here because they want to keep Phaethon's identity a secret for later. That's fine. You'd get more than enough mileage out of this first round just being a showdown between student and mentor, the sincere and the superficial, the champion of the people and the champion of overwhelming adversity. A clash between Zhu Yuan and Officer Bringer is a conclusion to their foiling, assurance to us that New Eridu is in exceptionally good hands, and an answer to that crucial question: can humanity persevere against the Hollows? We're just going to have to accept that in this timeline Harumasa won't get to Aura Farm. The evolution to Phase 2 is a clapback. How about now? And we'll rearrange the scramble with everyone from the other factions coming to help for after this point instead of before. Build up some tension, help us come to a conclusion ourselves, help Zhu Yuan get the assurance she needs to keep pushing despite the odds now officially being overwhelming. And then when Miyabi shows up, she gets to be the rebuttal and the punctuation. Even now, especially now, alone we struggle, together we thrive, and so long as I'm here, everything will turn out fine. And then you don't pass the baton. The final battle against the supercharged Bringer is one that needed to have been fought by Miyabi, Zhu Yuan, and Caesar. Chapter 1 and 2 are effectively a prelude, with Chapter 3 being where the story really kicks into gear. It's about serving yourself versus serving the people you've sworn yourself to, among other things. Zhu Yuan is the officer that Bringer could never be. She's a proper hero instead of a false idol, and their conflict needs to be resolved. Chapter 4 is about what it means to be a leader, and as Bringer pursues the commissioner position for selfish reasons and despises the people he's supposed to be protecting, the newly instated overlord of the Outer Ring makes a really good secondary foil to him and a hand to plant on Zhu Yuan's back. And of course, Miyabi is the one who delivers the coup de grace. Bell and Wise still get their confrontation at the end for world building, but it really should be Zhu Yuan who gets the last word in. Not to redeem Bringer or anything like that, but to tie a ribbon around the themes that have been pushed all season long, to assure him that she will keep being someone who protects people, no matter what hardships the Hollows throw their way. Organization and resolution are incredibly important. I always joke about the semantics and things like gacha game stories not really mattering because more people are here for polychromes and ass than compelling narratives, but that's not going to stop me from using what we were given as an example. When you tie a villain so closely to a protagonist, you can't give that villain to a different protagonist to beat. Most of the time. There are exceptions. If you do, you leave loose ends, which at the conclusion of something as important as a season is a very bad thing to do. It turns the unresolved character into a prop. And I know Zhu Yuan gets closure in the form of the voice recording of Bringer's flip to the dark side, but full stop, that isn't satisfying. I'm not saying that having Section 6 face off against Bringer all the way through doesn't have the potential to be awesome, but it definitely left a bad taste in my mouth. It feels like they left Zhu Yuan unwrapped so they could put a ribbon on an empty box. Section 6 already had a chapter dedicated to developing them, and they didn't deliver. Chapter 5 is the end. It's the point of no return. After this point, we will never get to resolve the little threads that are dangling, so those are the ones that we most desperately need tied. It's cool that everyone comes together for the last fight, even if I wish we got some more meaningful interactions throughout the chapter. And it's fine that Harumasa gets to do a single cool thing instead of only really existing and being a character during his agent story. And not everything has to be resolved. Plenty of threads reach past the ends of the story, and those are the ones we shouldn't expect to be resolved until a lot later. But if they don't, and they aren't tied off, they're tracks that can take us off the rails. And at the end of the day, this is ultimately a matter of opinion. And no matter that opinion, it doesn't change the story that we have and the story that's being shaped from the roots this chapter digs into the ground. I just like Zhu Yuan a lot. And I feel like if the pushing of a new character means the disregard of another, you should probably give that pushing a bit more thought. So, we're all in agreement that Jane should have been there during Zhu Yuan's hypothetical initial encounter with Bringer on the bridge. Yes, it should have been 3 phases instead of 2. The first being a challenging of who Bringer is as a way of breaking down the shell he hides behind. He's a bad person masquerading with the police officers, so that puts him in a prime position to be foiled and broken down by Jane, who's an officer who puts on criminal masks. Obviously, Zhu Yuan has to be the center of attention, and Xingyi has a place there as Zhu Yuan's good mentor, and the one who tipped her off to diverging from the path Bringer laid out for her. The 3 of them fighting Bringer in Phase 1 would be a really solid opening act, but Phase 2 needs Zhu Yuan and Bringer to be alone. Center the conflict down to spotlights and shine it on the 2 of them. This will be when Bringer cracks and takes the sacrifice injection, and when Zhu Yuan beats him with Bringer's old anti-corruption equipment. Then he gets the second dose, gets significantly stronger, the hand appears, and he starts pushing back. We get all the other characters showing up for an endgame moment, and then Zhu Yuan pushes back, gets into that one-on-one situation again, and Miyabi shows up with Caesar. They all say their pieces and put their pittance down, and then the 3 of them fight Bringer together and Miyabi finishes him off. God, it pisses me off that Zhu isn't even in the hollow with them when Bringer gets taken out. More than her not talking to Bringer all chapter long? No. Look, the point is that we've learned something from this. So let's take the feelings that making this video has put into our heads and make sure we don't make the same mistakes we think this chapter did ourselves. It is what it is, no matter how it rubs us.